use the truth to know. In love and honesty to grow and live in just and true. Great lofty heights attain to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign. Thank you very much. Please have your seats. To officially welcome us into this program, I'd like to invite the representative of the Permanent Secretary, Office of Environmental Service, Ministry of the Environment and Water Resources, Dr. Olasukomi Sojinu, to read to us the welcome address. A round of applause for him, please.
The Honorable Commissioner, Ministry of the Environment and Water Resources, ably represented by the Director, Sanitation Services Department, my very wonderful boss, Dr. Eshe Sanut. The members of the high table, all our representatives from the various Lagos State government MDAs, our colleagues from the various local government areas and the local council development areas here present, gentlemen of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is who is unavoidably absent at this meeting, who will have loved to be here, but we, of course, event, the Climate Change Summit event. And so, just to deliver his welcome address to us. Now, the essence of this gathering this morning is to bring all state actors together at the state level and at the local government level for us to discuss the key issue of environmental and social impact assessment. Now, environmental impact assessment, which is what many of us are used to, is a process of identifying and quantifying the likely impact of a proposed project or activity on the environment, on human health and human welfare, as well as other socioeconomic activities within that environment. It is a major decision-making tool, and it is important for policymakers to be abreast with the issue of environmental impact assessment to be able to take the right decisions in ensuring sustainable development. You are all aware that it is the aspiration of the Sanwo-Olu-led government to improve the living conditions of the good people of Lagos through the implementation of life-enhancing, projects across the state. Many of these projects will come with the sharing news of us having the infrastructure, but on the other side are also the impacts that come with these projects. Project development is like a two-sided coin, where on one side it brings comforts to us, and on the other side it comes with some form of impacts. Projects, no matter the nature or size, come with either positive or negative impacts. While we celebrate the positive impacts of these projects, we must also be conscious of the negative impacts of such projects. And that is why it is important for us to be abreast with how to address these impacts. Therefore, the Ministry of the Environment and Water Resources, through the Office of Environmental Stability, sought and got the approval of His Excellency, Mr. Governor, for MDAs within the state to begin to consider mainstreaming environmental impact assessment into their project planning and development activities. And this stakeholders engagement meeting is the first step in the direction to make sure that all MDAs, while planning for programs in years ahead, consider the inputs for environmental impact assessment. So we are glad to have you here this morning as we together brainstorm, deliberate on how we can begin to, ab initio, bring environmental impact assessment considerations into our project planning and development. On this note, I want to welcome you to this very important stakeholders engagement meeting and wish all of us a very, very fruitful deliberations. Thank you.
Round of applause once again for him. We're going straight to the lecture. And the first lecture for today will be given by Mr. Lasisi Adedoyin. And he will be speaking on mainstreaming environmental and social impact assessment into developmental initiative in Lagos State. Please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Lasisi Adedoyin.
While we allow the dignitaries to settle down, good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this stakeholder engagement. But basically, it's not a stakeholder engagement, it's, I will call it a family meeting. You know, when God created heaven and earth, He made the environment. And basically, we can say environment is the owner of everything, which means Ministry of Environment would say we are the firstborn. Environment, we are the firstborn. Then other ministries, parastatals are brothers, cousins, uncles. We have Office of Drainage Services, our twin member. So apart from that, you know, we also have other siblings. So we are here today, you know, some of our brothers, they have money more than us. You know, some ministries, they have money and they have funds more than us. But we want to talk. So what is affecting the environment? You know, as the firstborn, you want to call everybody that this legacy that our daddy decided to give to us, don't let us what? Waste it. And that's why we are here. So today, we are going to talk about mainstreaming environment and social impact into developmental initiatives in Lagos State. Most of us are doing programs and we are doing projects. Are we considering the impact of those programs and projects in? So basically, I will start by using this illustration. He said, don't be a watermelon organization. A lot of people, a lot of companies, a lot of individuals Most of the projects we carried out are not done basically by us, but by proponents who apply to our MDAs for this project. And they want to claim, yeah, our project is sustainable, we are carrying environment along. Most of them are basically doing what we call greenwashing. They are just basically doing it for their corporate image, but not really to sustain the environment. So we say they are like greening outside, which is watermelon, which is green outside, but it is what? Red inside. If our forefathers decided to wake up today and they decided to come back to Lagos, what would they see? This is Abu Dhabi in 1970, and this is Abu Dhabi now. This is Lagos in 1970. This is Lagos now. The two parents, if they decided to wake up, which one would be happy? The one in Abu Dhabi or the one in Lagos? Most of our parents are telling us that Lagos of early 70s or early 80s, it's more beautiful and more nicer, a clean environment than Lagos of today. So what do we mean? Are we developing in terms of environment, or we are what? Going back. So if Tinubu Square in 1970 can be as beautiful as this, and you all know, if you go to Lagos Island, if you go to Tinubu Square today, will you able to recognize the square? No, it has been crowded by a lot of what? Activities. Socrates said in the early 15th century, he said, let who want to move the world first complete an environmental impact assessment and in 90 days public comment, which means EIA has been with us for years, for centuries. So why are we just hearing it now? If a philosopher says, let people be involved in a project, gather people's comments, gather people's opinion before you carry out your project. Do an EIA before you do anything. Why are we not doing that? What is this buzz about ESIA? What do you mean by ESIA? Environment, they always want to stop us. They want to stop our project. Is it because just for us to do EIA, let's just do this EIA for them and just go? No, it is not just do this EIA. It is doing the EIA and doing it properly. For most of us, we heard about Hurricane Katrina. However, 3 years before Hurricane Katrina occurred, a journalist, a researcher had warned the people in that area of an impending disaster. He said, we anticipate that with refuge of at least resort in place, some 5 to 10% of individuals who remain in the face of the catastrophe some are going to lose lives. This was in 2001, and CNN carried the story in 2004. Hurricane Katrina had not. August 29, 2005, Hurricane Katrina struck, and we all know what happened in the United States. A lot of people died. More than 1,000 people lost their life. That is in the United States, where we all feel, okay, they have the best emergency preparedness, they have the best thing. This is a bridge, an eco bridge in Singapore. Not a bridge for human being. Just a bridge whereby animals will be able to cross. They want to do a super highway across a forest. And they know that the animals normally migrate from one part of the forest to the other part of the forest. So if they do the highway, there's probability that while the animals are migrating, humans will be what? Will be moving. So in order not to affect the activities of the animal, they decided to incorporate a bridge over the highway so that what? The animals can be able to move. There will be interaction between humans and what? And animals. That is considering environment into what? Into project planning and implementation. What happens if pollinators and plants drift away? For most of us who study science, or just basically biology while we're in secondary school, For any plant to grow, the insects have to what? Help in the pollination activity. So if you want to have farms around us, but the insects that are going to pollinate are far, far away, are we going to have agriculture? We're not going to have it. So it is very, very important for us to consider this while we are doing projects and planning. That is in terms of animal. That is in terms of life. However, there are some things that also we need to consider during project planning. Some social interactions that affect project planning. Sometimes you do a project, at the end of the day, the project will not be successful. You know, say, why is this project not successful? Because sometimes the social component of the project were not included in the project design. There's something that is very common here. We do public toilet in Ministry of Environment, and we do the public toilet in most of markets and most of those places, and we found out that they don't use the public toilets. One of the case studies is the public toilet we put on, the location, the people who are using that public toilet don't use the water system. They like the skirting system. And we put a water closet there, and the people will know what? Will not use it because they are used to what? The skirting method. But because we did not put the social interaction in designing the what? In designing the public toilet. So we all know about Northern Ireland and we know about the Belfast. It's a region that the Protestants, the Catholic communities, they have been fighting for centuries. What do they fight for? They fight for small things like which side of the road should I walk? What color of flag should be? What direction should you enter a building? So if I want to enter a building, some part of the community can say, okay, I like going through the right. I like going through the left. So if a developer wants to come and develop a building in that place, and he wants a Protestant, he wants a Catholic, or he wants this person to, so he has to put those things into what? Into consideration. If he did not put those social interaction into consideration, the project will what? Will fail. So in Northern Ireland, a development in Belfast have to get anthropologists to what? To help to recommend the location of the entrance that will be neutral. He does, I don't want to follow the Catholic and I don't want to follow the what? The Methodist. I just want a situation whereby my project will carry everybody along. So you see, these are social interactions that can affect a project and that can make a project worldwide. So today, my presentation will go in this way. I will have an introduction, what environmental, social, and impact assessment is all about. What do we want to achieve with it? What is the objective? What is the principle? What are the constraints of mainstreaming ESIA into our projects, and what is the benefits? And what are the way forward? Environment cannot, we can't just overlook it. A small thing within the environment is enough to distort the circle. This is just one single tree. We know the value of that single tree. If we want to power an event center that this kind of people will sit and they will enjoy the AC, we know the number of energy that will come out of it. We know the kind of emission that will come out of it. But just look at that one single tree and look at what is doing. That is how powerful the environment is all about. This picture shows a public transport with 70 people and what? Cars with what? 70 people. The emission from cars with 70 people will compare to what? A bus that will just carry only what? The 70 people. That is putting environmental consideration into what? Into planning. The world is becoming urbanized. Everybody wants to live in the city. We are going from a mega city to what? A meta city. So with that, our ecosystem, the wetland, the forest, everything will continue to be degraded. And the more we burn, the more we want materials, the more the resources of the world we got what? We got exploited. So basically, our environment is the physical, the biological, and the what? The social. The physical interaction, the biological, the organism around us, the plants, and the what? And the animal. And, you know, for all of us, we are social animal. We interact with one another. So also for sustainability or for sustainable development to occur, we need to put this thing into place. And in designing for the future, 3 key things has been made as a standard: the brown infrastructure, the blue infrastructure, and the what? The green infrastructure. So every of your design, you will need the brown infrastructure, the buildings, the roads, the bridges, everything that we are doing. However, as we are doing them, we must be able to incorporate the what? The blue infrastructure and the what? And the green infrastructure. Let's take example. This is Lekki Axis. This is the chevron end of Lekki Axis. We can see the buildings. This is a satellite image. You can see the buildings, you can see the road. But in terms of sustainability, the 3 things we look out for: the brown infrastructure is there, the green infrastructure is there, but the blue infrastructure is just small. We just see some tiny swimming pool around. This is the new Cairo city. Egypt is moving its capital from the old Cairo to the new Cairo. And in designing the new Cairo, what did they do? You can see the 3 things. The brown infrastructure is there, the blue infrastructure is there, and the green infrastructure is there. You can see the design, a lot of greening, and you can see the water park and everything. That is designing for what? Sustainability. They don't have to use artificial things to what? To wet the ground. So what is ESIA? Basically, it's a combination of 2 things: environmental impact and what? Social impact. Environmental and social impact assessment. So EIA and SEA, strategic environmental assessment, it can be, the 2 can be separated, and they can also be what? Be combined. While EIA basically focused on projects, SEA focused on what? Programs, policy, and interactions. Before the advent of democracy, Lagos State, that's something we do. All of a sudden, we had what we call policy or directional misuse. And because people always want the best things for themselves. So government introduced private sector participation, and we want people to imbibe the culture of waste. And that time, people moved from moving their waste by the side of their houses, and they decided what? Take it to the main road. Up till now, we can't get out of that syndrome. People move their waste from what? To the main road. So environmental and social impact consists of a systematic investigation into both positive and negative effects of a proposed development project. So sometimes a project may have positive impact. They may also have negative impact. So what does an ESIA does? It evaluates both the positive and the negative impact and try to see how we can put remedial action so that the impact will not be what? Maximum. So why do we need to conduct an ESIA? Before I do a project, before I come out with a policy, why do I need to do an ESIA? Because environmental sustainability is the only thing that can save us. Human development is growing fast. We're having buildings, we're having roads, and all these things are having impact on what? On humans' life. Also, there's a relationship between the natural and the human environment. If a new settlement, if we have a new settlement, somebody move in now, before what happened? We see a lot of people moving in. The way the rate at which people are growing in communities in Lagos is growing higher than the rate at which infrastructure are what? We are putting infrastructure there. But before those infrastructure comes in, if we have plans and program, if we have decided to look into the environment sensitivity of that environment, it will be very better for us. So the environments, the natural and the bio aspect, where impact of human development impact of human activity can be. It can be on the groundwater, it can be on climate, it can also be on genetic resources. Social aspects, it can be on public health, it can be on cultural heritage, it can also be on something as virtual. Economic aspect, projects can affect resources. It can also affect land use. And it can even move from one country to what? To another country. Which earth do we want to live in? Which Lagos do we want to live in? A Lagos that is healthy or a Lagos that is what? Sick. So which one do we want to live in? The one that is healthy. So if we want to live in a Lagos that is healthy, each and every one of us must be ready to what? To put that in place. This is not my publication. This is a publication by a newspaper. He said he got to General Hospital. Paradise by what? In hell. The Igodo landfill site has been there since 1980. However, we decided to have a what? A general hospital. That is the only land that is available for us. Yes, it is the only land that is available for us. But we move it close to the location. However, a little change in the orientation of the design of the hospital will be able to what? Help the impact of what? Of the smoke and everything. So if we move the generator house, move all the amenities close to the dump site, it will reduce the impact of the dump site on what? On it. That is putting EIA into what? Into consideration. But because that was not done, some of the facilities where human beings will be are very what? Closer to so if you want to do a maternity center, or if you want to do something, don't say, no, we can't do an EIA for it. No, it's just maternity center. No, it is important for us to what? To consider it, because we can see now that as simple as smoke from a landfill site can affect what? An infrastructure. Similar things now. This is the new Mercy Children's Hospital. And that is the Loma transfer loading site, close to it. So we don't want to make the mistake of the past and allow it to affect what? The future. This is Dangote Industrial Complex. It's growing and it's growing fast. And it's going to be the major commercial hub of Lagos State in the next 5-10 years. This is a study carried out in California, close to where the refinery is. They said living 10 miles of an oil refinery is associated with cancer. So people that live close to a refinery is what? Is associated with cancer. Bladder cancer and other have been what? Have been detected. You don't know what people do now. The marketers, the estate marketer, they say, estate around what? Around Dangote refinery. They will go and build close to Dangote refinery. Some years now, when they have problem, they will write to Ministry of Environment. Ministry of Environment, we're having problem. You did not consult us before you do what? You build your estate around there. You did not consult Ministry of Environment. You don't have a clearance, because if you have consulted Ministry of Environment, we will have tell you that you need to have this kind of buffer before you what? Before you develop close to the refinery. But the economic aspect is what people are looking about. If Dangote is going to have over 5,000 workers. So if you build an estate close to it, you have what? You have rentage. You have people that will rent it, yes. But sometimes things that is economical can be what? Can have health and environment impact. This is Ekpe landfill site. Opposite Ekpe landfill site is also Alaro City, which is similar thing. Do we put consideration before citing projects close to each other? Lekki Ekpe Expressway. If you look at Lekki Ekpe Expressway, if you have somebody that is very close to that area, Lekki Ekpe Expressway don't have drains, because the master plan of that area, the setback to Lekki Ekpe Expressway is supposed to serve as watershed, whereby rainwater will be what? Will be collected. What happened now? Because people, some of our agencies, some of our ministries sees that, okay, probably it's just land that is available. They now decided to turn it to what? Car lots. They now decided to turn it to car lot. They are not using it as garden. They are not using it as park. That place was designed as what? As a water retention. Because the Atlantic Ocean is there, the lagoon is there, Lekki is in between, and we are developing. If we are developing, and rainwater in area like that don't percolate easily. So they need to be in a place for some times. But now what we are doing, all the high tension, both right and left, they are supposed to serve as water retention points, and where we are what? We are putting things there. So we are encouraging people. No, we have if Ministry of Environment go there and serve them notice, they say, no, one ministry has given us approval. We have paid this. Yes, we want revenue, but no revenue at the detriment of what? Of the environment. So this is another country. We don't see things under their words. They are high tension. These are setbacks of roads in African countries. We don't see them putting parks. You can't put, because expressway are for articulated vehicle. So if articulated vehicle have brake failure on an expressway, there are enough setback for them to what? To run over. Not running into what? Into people and what? And business. Isheri North scheme. We all know the story of Isheri North scheme. Isheri North scheme designed at the plane of what? A flood plain. And while they were designing it, Ministry of Environment, Drainage Resources, okay, no worry. It is after we finish the structure, we will invite Ministry of Environment and Drainage. And when they finish and they allocated all the plots and the problem starts, they call Ministry of Environment and Water Resources. But at that time, there's nothing we can do. So the place, every rainy period, it becomes what? Flooded. There's nothing Ministry of Environment can do. So while we are designing the scheme, at the beginning of the designing of the scheme, Ministry of Environment will contact us. We want to do this. What is your environmental input in it? Okay, we'll be able to tell you, yes, it's a floodplain. No, for a floodplain, when it rains during the rainy season, the riverbank will be overflowed by 50 meters, by 100 meters. So if you want to do any plot, don't do any plot close to what? The 50 meter or the 100 meter. And that was not done. And because that was not done, we are having that problem. We are having the same problem in Lekki Phase 2 Ogombo now. We're having the same problem in Lekki Phase 2 Ogombo now. Most of the allocated government land, they are waterlogged. Because we just decide to what? Have plots. We did not have water retention pond. We should have water retention pond because we know there are wetlands. Wetlands are places where you have water throughout the year. That is what God made it natural. But we want to turn everything into land. What people are now doing, they are doing subsurface dredging. They are doing inland dredging. They dredge from, not even from the lagoon. They dredge right on their land, and they extract sand from underground. And when you do that, it affects the integrity of. So in the last 2 or 3 years, we just see some people say there's a sinkhole in Lagos. Why? Because somebody is doing something that is not right. One thing that is also common for us is that we're having a lot of reclamation on the Lagos Lagoon. Yes, we want to expand Lagos. We want to reclaim. Yes, project, we are not saying don't do it. But what we are saying is, how do we do it? The process by which we are going to what? We are going to do it. Not that after designing the project, that is when you come for EIA. No. While you are conceptualizing the project, let's put environmental consideration into it. If you look at, that is Banana Island there. From Banana Island, we are reclaiming other parts. So the more we reclaim, the water from Lekki Phase 1, this is Lekki Phase 1, Lekki Elegushi. Before we reclaim, the water will enter the lagoon through here. But immediately we reclaim here, it takes what? another long stretch before the what? Before the water gets into the lagoon. And that fall caused what? A fall back into that. So all those things are things we need to put into consideration. We are not only reclaiming the Lekki side, we want to start reclaiming the Ikorodu side now. We want to reclaim the Ikorodu side. We want to reclaim Oworo side. This is a proposed Odogun. So imagine this one coming to Odogun water. We can't imagine what will happen in the future. It's not only the reclamation that is the problem. This is a dredger on the Tomiland Bridge. This is a dredger on the Tomiland Bridge, doing dredging and also reclaiming now. You can see the dredger close to the Tomiland Bridge. I don't know, that will be less than what? 100 meter or 200 meter close to what? To the Tomiland Bridge. Tomiland Bridge is decompiled. That means they pile into it. So if somebody is dredging, there's probability that what? The soil that serves at the backbone for the bridge is what the person is what? Is dredging. And that is putting what? The integrity of the bridge at what? At risk. It's putting the integrity of the bridge at risk. So if this project goes through an EIA, it will pass because the borough pit around here, Ministry of Environment will not what? Will not allow it. But because we are not the only one considering that, they will what? It will go. Estate construction, yes. One of the biggest challenges for Nigeria is housing. Yes, we are doing housing and we are collaborating with a lot of people. You look at this estate, you say, oh, this is a fine estate. Yes, it's a fine estate. But the blue, green, and the brown, do we put it into consideration while we are designing this estate? Ministry of Environment, we made a recommendation that 30% of your land should be for what? Greening. So if you are designing your estate, 30% must be for greening. If you look at that estate, what is the 30% there? So we are putting a lot of structures and we are putting a lot of paving stones. So the more we put paving stone, the more the sun radiation will what? Will come in and it gets absorbed. And Lagos become what? An heat island. Lagos will become an heat island. There's no stormwater consideration for this estate. No sewage treatment consideration for this estate. These are things we want us to put into it. We are now having buildings in Lagos. 25-story building, 21-story building, 15-story building in Lagos. Yes, it's good. But can we allow buildings in Lagos to continue now without being a green building? Every multi-story building in Lagos now must be green, must be self-sufficient. Must be green, must be self-sufficient. Any building that is going from 7th floor in Lagos that does not have green certification, we should not encourage them because they absorb heat, they use a lot of energy. So if those things are not put into consideration, it will affect everybody. This is Heritage Building in Ikoyi. It's one of the buildings that is green. It's green, it has a green certification. All the water here are recycled. All the water in Heritage Building are recycled, which means they help us to save the groundwater. They don't have to pump the water all the time. They harvest the rainwater and they reuse it. And that saves us from what? From groundwater extraction. Container terminal. This is the new business in Lagos. This is the new business in Lagos. Everybody wants to do container terminal. Ikorodu everywhere. But I just want to give us an example of this is container terminal in Ebute Metta. And we all know Ebute Metta. Ebute Metta is what? Residential area. Purely what? Residential. But we are mixing some of the commercial activity into it now. But we are doing high commercial activity. We are putting high commercial activity. This is Redeem Coastal Worship Center. That's coming up in what? In Ebute Metta. This is coming up in Ebute Metta. If you look at this capacity now, this would be like 5,000 or what? 7,000 or... So imagine after the completion of this building, the first service here, and we have, this is a container terminal coming up in Ebute Metta, another container terminal in Ebute Metta, and this is the Redeem Within 5-kilometer radius, we have what? High capacity projects. Which road in Ebute Metta is dual carriage? There's no road in Ebute Metta that is where, unless the main Yaba road, and that is where we are putting the train now. So which means how the road in Ebute Metta cannot what? Absorb 2-3 container terminal and what? A high capacity project. So which means immediately this project finish in the next 2 or 3 years, the problem we are having in Apapa now, we are transferring it to what? To Ebute Metta. We want to solve Apapa problem, but we are what? We are transferring it to another part of Lagos. As we are transferring it to Ebute Metta, we are also transferring it to what? To Ikorodu. We are also transferring it to Ojo, towards the Janikin area. So let's redesign our sister agency that has ministerial function on this project. How do we redesign this area? How do we look into it? It's not about we want revenue. Yes, the state wants revenue, but the revenue that will affect the future of the state will not. If a container fell down just on the road, what happened? It takes us period to move it, and that will affect everybody. In other part of this is California. This is their waterfront. California is also a capital, very industrious state like Lagos. But they have plans, and the plans are what? Are working. Lekki Regional Road. I just want to use Lekki Regional Road as an example. Apart from Lekki Regional Road, there is Ewe-Elekpe Road, there is Beribe Road, there is Agura Road that we are doing. Road construction is taking a lot of tolls on Lagosians. I will not talk about the man hour. I want to talk about the air quality. Lagos State, we are expecting the World Bank team on air quality assessment on the state. PM 2.5, dust particulates coming from road projects are affecting the citizen. The noise level are affecting the citizen. If you go to Lut, if you go to Lasut, you will know that diseases that are related to this kind of project are affecting us. And if we don't solve the problem while we are designing the road, it will what? It will affect us. The dust is going into the atmosphere. You think it's in Ikorodu. It's not only in Ikorodu, it's what? It's dispersing. And that is what we are what? We are breathing in. Because they are so finite. They are so finite, we don't see them. It gets into our nostrils, it gets into our lungs. And so these things is affecting our health. Yes, we want road. But do we want to do road for dead people? No. So which means we have to put consideration into it. The Lekki Regional Road, we are designing, we are doing it. But some of the components of the project needs environmental consideration. So if we want to do similar projects in the future, what are the environmental considerations we are putting into it? Let's see just a small impact of road projects. A road project can affect the soil. It can affect the water, the ecosystem. It can affect the air. It can even affect the community activity. If you go to Lekki houses now, people don't come to their houses. They leave on Monday and they will come back weekend because nobody wants to drive in the traffic. So also it happens in Agege. Do we put those considerations into place? There's a project there's a scenario that I watched on, was it African Network, of a project in a state in Nigeria. Yes, government paid compensation. They really paid compensation, paid everything. However, the compensation they paid, the consultant that did the resettlement action plan did not look at some social component. Some of the SSC students could not meet up with their WAEC. Because they did not look at that component. How many students will be sitting for WAEC that in that area, they were unable to get school. in the place their parents relocated to. Some were moving, and that is adding extra cost to what? To their parents. And we will only pay compensation for what? For the building we demolished. The compensation we paid is only for the building. We did not pay compensation for the child that we what? That is relocating. So if you are doing a road and we pay compensation that we are relocating you people, we pay them money. We pay for the houses. But did we help them to follow up on how their children are going to get into another school? We did not do that. Those are social components that ESIA will have what? Will have looked into. So project development has a lot of risk. The risk can be high. The risk can be just substantial. The risk can be moderate, and the risk can be low. So at the design of the project, let's look at our project. Does it have a high risk? Does it have a low risk? Is it moderate? Even if it is low, how do we what? Mitigate them. So environmental risk and impact, this could be defined in the environmental health and safety guidelines. There are guidelines for every project. The World Bank, the IFC has guidelines for every project. We may not have these guidelines in Nigeria. We have those guidelines in other countries. So if you want to do a rail project, what are the things we consider? A rail project close to a public school. If we have to move that public school away, because the rail activity will cause attention deficit for the students. While the train is moving, the student will not be able to what? To concentrate. Every time the train is moving, the student will not be able to what? To concentrate. One thing that is even common here in us is that if you do a study, look at most of the schools in Lagos, you see markets surrounding those schools. You see markets surrounding those schools. How will students concentrate when markets and schools are what? Close to each other. Motor parks close to schools. How will students concentrate? It will affect their attention, and that their concentration level will be. There's a study carried out by a UK team who came to Lagos. They took samples from schools close to highways in Lagos. If you see the lead level in schools that are closer to highways in Lagos, the lead level in their soil are very, very high, which means this lead level, these are the things the students play with. So that means the students are absorbing the what? The lead. And what happened to lead? Lead affects brain development in children. So if you have schools that are close to highway and the children are exposed to lead, in the next few years, we say we have all of those children. Well, it's not. We are the one causing it. It is not. So these are things why consideration for project siting is very, very important. Why do we need to mainstream EIA into our project development? You see, there are some decisions, whether national or local, whether in policy, rules, plans, or investments, we need to put environmental impact into it. Anticipate or avoid risk. Every project has a risk. Every action has what? Negative and positive what? Consequence. So we want the positive to be more than the what? The negative. Yes, we want to build school. But if you build school close to a market, if you build school close to a motor park, are we doing the right thing? No, we're not. We're not doing the right thing. We're not doing the right thing. So adopt to utilize national environmental and social institution system, laws, regulation, and procedure. There are laws, there are procedures, there are systems in place that will help us to guide our works, that will help us to guide our projects in project design and in project planning. And we should start incorporating these things into it so that our projects and programs can be what? Sustainable. This is CMS flooding. This happened early this year. All of a sudden, we just woke up and how many? 5 hours rain. And the OCMS is what? Flooded. It's not Lekki. It's not Lekki. It's not VI. CMS getting flooded. That should be a what? A serious concern for us. It should be a serious concern for us. It's a warning. It's a what? It's a warning. If it is Lekki, we can say, they are water people. That is their normal life. But this is CMS. You can see cars submerged. Yes, we have some immediate cause. People blocking canals, people blocking this. But can people blocking canals be the actual main cause? There are some other remote causes that we should look into. Surprise is the new normal. Surprise is the new normal now. Everybody woke up here 2020 and we felt the word is what? Is this. One small tiny thing decided to keep what? Everybody in lock. Coronavirus, whether it was created in the lab or it was the movement of things from animal to human, but how small that virus is, it was able to lock the whole world down for what? 28 days. The whole world down for 28 days. That is how small environmental, biological things can be for us. So if that time we started saying, this is how to keep your pet, this is how to keep your animal, don't bring endangered species to this. If coronavirus did not occur, we will be doing that. We will not. We start going around, start locking markets that are what? That are selling endangered species. The thing that we should have put in place. So if we don't want shock, if you don't want surprise, we should start putting those things in what? In place. Last week, we heard that a doctor in Canada decided that we should start giving climate notification to medicine. Canadian woman become the first person to be diagnosed suffering from climate change. The doctor said yes, so because I look at the woman, the only thing I can say, our diagnosis is what? Climate change. So we can see that our nomenclature is what? Is changing. Everything is what? Connected. Climate goes to health, it goes to life, it goes to what? Infrastructures. So what are the principles of effective ESIA? Leadership. We must show leadership. As government, let us show leadership. Let us show leadership. When private sector starts seeing that our projects are conforming to what? ESIA, they will what? They will also follow suit. Integration, it should be two-way. It should be two-way. You design a project, you look at the environmental consideration. Oh, okay, can we do it this way? Can you do it this way? Okay, we have designed the project. Oh, we can't change the project design again. No, it shouldn't be that way. There should be dialogue. There should be dialogue. Let's have a dialogue. So what are the constraints, key constraints? Ownership. Ministry of Environment is our project. You can't help us to design it. You can't talk into it. It's our project. We've got governor has given us approval. No, don't come to it. No, don't let us do that. Don't let us do that. Let us be transparent and what? Be accountable. Let us be transparent and be what? Be accountable. What are the key constraints? Yes, most people say, we have to finish this project with this administration. We have to finish this project. No, there's always political will. If we have planned, if we have put it into it, we will do it. Lack of understanding and awareness. Most people, we don't know what our environment is. We don't know what our environment is. Every year, every time, scientists are discovering new species. New things are being discovered. That means we don't even know the total environment. Lack of data and information. We don't have data. So if you want to predict, how do you predict when you don't have data? Human resources, funding. For us to get funding to get some projects, it will take eternity. Personal short interest, okay, too much new legislation. There's environmental law. Some agencies will just go and do another law that is related to environment. It's not only environment, it's me that is, it's my responsibility now. I'm the owner of vehicle, so I'm the one that should do emission vehicle. No, everything is environment. Everything is environment. Don't decide it because you start bringing things into it. What are the benefits? The benefit of mainstreaming ESIA is greater. We carry our stakeholders together. We carry people together. We let citizens see why we are doing this thing for them. It will improve domestic and foreign resources mobilization for the environment. When people start saying that you are complying to ESIA, people want to bring projects to your environment. What is the way forward? What is the way forward? So carry Ministry of Environment and Water Resources along in your year 2020 budget preparation. At the beginning, yes, so we have a road in this place, so we want to do this road here. We want to do this housing here. This proponent comes to us, so these people do this thing. Come, let's discuss it. They are experts in drainage, they are experts, they are scientific experts, geologists, everybody in the ministry. We can help you to what? To modify the project. Seek ESIA sign-off as a requisite for procurement process in Lagos State. We have not done this. But if we find out that our MDAs are not cooperating, we may decided to ask HE to give us a sign-off. So before you get your budget approval, before procurement approve your project, you need to get a sign-off from Ministry of Environment. That is, they will not say, people will not start on. We don't want to do that. But these are likely options we can what? We can do. We can also seek executive order. We can ask Mr. Governor to give us an executive order so that ESIA can be mainstream into it, because sustainable development is one of the key pillars of this administration. So if we want sustainable development and we are not mainstreaming ESIA into our project, we are not doing the right thing. Green is now the new black. Green is now the new black. We want to do environment. They are doing bad thing, but they will just what? They will just cover it green. You go to some company. Inside the company is what? Is bad. But outside, good flower, good building, everything. You think they are doing it. No. Green is the new black. From gasoline-powered car to electric car, what will be the next one? A car that can go 1 mile per carrot. That means we'll be incorporating what? Human, animal, and what? And car. That is what we'll be doing in the next future. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening.
Can we please put our hands together for him? That was a very, very informative speech. I'd like to request, sir, that you return to your seat. Thank you so much. We'll now be taking the keynote address, and that will be given by the representative of the Honorable Commissioner, Ministry of Environment and Water Resources. Please put your hands together to welcome with me Dr. Hassan Sanuth.
Good afternoon, everybody. Kindly permit me to adopt the already established protocol. By the time the first present started, I was jotting down some things, hoping that I'm going to make some contributions. However, by the time we enter the presentation proper and it's rounding up, I realized that this is explicit. Do we all agree with me on that? The attentiveness that I can see each and every one of us also convinced me that he has communicated. So without wasting much time, I will therefore go to the keynote address as prepared for the Honorable Commissioner, who could not be here due to some other state assignment. So I hereby read the speech as prepared. Give me pleasure to be here this morning at this important stakeholders engagement workshop. This workshop is designed to bring together all state actors to discuss the critical role of environmental and social impact assessment for collective strides towards sustainable development in the state. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, you will agree with me that it is no longer news that Lagos State remains the preferred destination for many businesses operating within the various sectors of Nigeria economy. This preference can be likened to a two-sided coin. Why on one hand it is sharing news as it opens the state to economic prosperity and growth. On the other hand, it comes with various types of environmental and social challenges. The establishment of industrial facilities, creation of new settlements, and construction of infrastructures all come with huge adverse environmental impact, ranging from pollution of various environmental media, that is the air, land, and water, to sometimes irreversible environmental degradation, if not proper damage. It is for these obvious reasons that Lagos State government, through the Ministry of the Environment and Water Resources, has adopted the application of environmental impact assessment in ensuring sustainable implementation of development projects in the state in line with environmental impact assessment is a formal process for identifying the likely impacts that may arise from a proposed activity or project on the environment, human health, and socio-economic activities. In essence, EIA, in identifying the likely adverse and beneficial impact of a project with the aim of putting in place measures to reduce or mitigate the adverse ones. Thus, EIA is a critical environmental management tool that must be embraced by both private and public sector if we are to achieve sustainable development. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, permit me to reiterate here that the state government cannot afford the huge cost of addressing environmental degradation and ecological challenges resulting from unwholesome project development activities. The cost of doing the right thing is cheaper than the cost of remediating or correcting the consequences of refusal to do them. This is why, as a ministry, we have committed ourselves to creating awareness on the need for participation and compliance with the EIA process in the state. To this end, we have developed the Citizen Guide on EIA to educate members of the public and provide them with required information on EIA process in the state. We have embarked on stakeholders engagement meetings to several local government areas in the state, with the latest one held in Badagry local government area in August 2021, where the EIA report of the Badagry Deep Sea Port and Free Zone project were discussed. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, EIA has become a global decision-making tool for policymakers in protecting the environment, with nations across the globe enacting laws and setting strict standards to ensure compliance. Lagos State cannot be an exception. It is, however, worrisome that while we continue to see improvement in level of compliance of the private sector player to the process, the same cannot be said of the public sector. Some state government ministries, departments, and agencies have continued to execute development projects in the state without environmental and social impact consideration. This situation portrays the state government as adopting double standards by insisting that private individuals and corporate organizations comply with the process, while the government MDAs on the other part are not. This workshop is therefore aimed at reversing the trend by encouraging MDAs to mainstream ESIA into their development initiatives. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as I welcome you to this workshop, permit me to reiterate that protecting our environment is our collective responsibility. As we strive to improve the welfare of Lagosians through implementation of the various laudable projects of this administration, we must do so in a sustainable manner. We must ensure we are not creating new problems as we are trying to solve existing ones. I wish you a fruitful deliberation. Signed, Tunji Bello, Honorable Commissioner.
A round of applause again for the Honorable Commissioner. Before we move on to the second lecture, we have prepared a short video for us to watch, which will further explain to us what EI is all about. So we'll be taking the film show right now if we're ready. Mr. Lasisi, are we ready?
The quality of an EIA depends largely on the proper identification of the environmental and social aspects that may be subject to direct and indirect impacts from the proposed activity or project. A clearly defined project scope is the basis of an adequate EIA. Therefore, identifying the relevant issues and concerns from the beginning is an essential part of the EIA process. If the scope is too narrow, the EIA might overlook significant impacts that are not necessarily obvious but real and possibly negative, or leave out stakeholders who would be affected by an activity or project. If the scope is too broad or unclear, the EIA can become overstretched and overburdened with irrelevant issues, require unnecessary efforts, and distract from the analysis of key issues. With new development projects, there is a risk of generating site-specific impacts, as well as impacts on the surrounding areas. The risks and impacts do not always decrease with an increase in distance from the project site. Some impacts are obvious, while others are not. The scoping phase should take place in the beginning of the EIA process and ideally include the participation of the reviewer. The participation of reviewers in this phase shapes the EIA process, including the scope, purpose, alternatives, area of study, resources, and the type of assessment. Unfortunately, scoping is often done before the reviewers are involved. In many cases, EIA reviewers are left to determine after the fact whether the scoping was done correctly, whether the correct number of topics and scenarios were contemplated, and whether all the information and perspectives were considered. Was there an opportunity to solicit views and comments from all the key stakeholders? Who was involved or consulted in the process of preparing the EIA, and in what way? The benefits of communicating with and involving all stakeholders is important, especially during the EIA review. Technical experts may overlook key information or areas of study that local citizens and communities can more easily identify due to their proximity to the potentially affected areas and greater stake in the outcome. Fortunately, When trying to assess or define the scope of an EIA, reviewers do not have to guess. Some helpful criteria for evaluating the adequacy of the scoping include the following. Are potentially significant issues and interactions for natural and human environments indicated? Are insignificant issues identified and their exclusion from further assessment justified? Are the viewpoints of all stakeholders considered? Are the spatial and temporal scopes of the EIA defined in sufficient detail? Is an adequate geographic area considered? Are any significant issues omitted? Are key issues and situations clarified? After confirming that the scoping has been done correctly, the reviewer ensures that there is a solid foundation for a well-focused and complete EIA. The EIA will serve as the basis for decision-making and defining the appropriate requirements for the project proponents. Additionally, the scoping stage provides valuable input for analyzing the alternatives for project siting and design. Ultimately, this can help avoid unnecessary and significant impacts and lead to more sustainable projects.
We'll be going on to the second lecture, but before we do that, I'd like to let us know that there will be room for questions. And I know that from the lecture that we've been given, we'll have one or two questions that I would like to ask the facilitator. So immediately after this second lecture, we'll be given opportunity for us to ask our question. The second lecture will be taken by Dr. Olasukomi Sojinu, and he will be taking us through the EIA process in Lagos State. Please put your hands together to welcome him.
Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Permit me to stand on the already established protocol. My colleague has done a good job by taking us through the issues that we are confronted with when it comes to not doing the right thing or not doing the right things at the right time. And as long as Lagos State exists, project implementation will continue. As long as man exists on the earth, man will continue to exploit the earth. There's nothing we can do about it. And so the only way to go is to find a way to exploit the earth in a sustainable manner. And so today, I would just want to build on what he's done already to take us through what exactly is the process and the procedures for environmental impact assessment in Nigeria and then in Lagos State. So that's, please, next slide, please. My outline, a brief introduction, what are the institutional and regulatory framework for EIA, what are the procedural guidelines for EIA, and then we're going to have an overview of the EIA study itself. So next slide. He has already given us the definition of EIA. Of course, he has already told us what EIA is all about. In a layman's language, without going academic, EIA is you trying to predict and identify the likely impacts that may arise from a project you are proposing to embark on before you start the project. And so EIA is actually a pre-project process where you take your proposed project through a process where you are able to identify what are the likely consequences or likely impacts of that project, 1, on environment, 2, on human health, and 3, on the socioeconomic activities within that environment. And so you do that before the project commences. And so that is why for us in the Ministry of Environment, when a project has been implemented and you are talking about EIA, we tell you there's already a violation. Because EIA must be before a project is commences. And the idea is that, so that when you take the findings of that EIA study, you can incorporate it into your design to be able to either avoid some impacts or to reduce some impacts. So that's why we are encouraging our MDAs, our sister MDAs, and particularly those who are concerned with project implementation, and our colleagues at the local government level to let us begin to embrace the EIA process to be able to identify ab initio before you commence a project. For instance, you want to construct a drain. You want to solve the problem of flooding. But you can actually create another problem while constructing the drain, which is supposed to solve a problem. You can create another problem through the construction. And so not to do that, it's for us to embrace the EIA process. So EIA, basically, that is what it is. It is a decision-making tool for decision makers and policy makers to be able to say, okay, this project is doable because we have identified the negative impacts that can come from this project. We have measures to ameliorate them, and the positive impacts actually outweighs the negative impact. So that is what EIA is all about in a nutshell. Next slide. Now, because we have mentioned the word impact here today, like several times, permit me to define what an impact is. Any change from the original situation, before the project start implementation, any change caused to the environment or to human health or to the socioeconomic activities in that environment as a result of the project is called impact. Any change. And so any deviation from the baseline, what used to be before your project comes in, and now your project has come in and there's a deviation from maybe the people say before, we normally sleep well, but the moment you start your project, we can't even sleep at night. That is an impact. Before, our children can walk freely on the road here. They walk by the roads and nothing happened to them. Now, they can't walk around now because vehicle will knock them down. That's an impact. So any change in that environment or to the lifestyle of the people as a result of your project is an impact. And so when we say impacts, that's what it means. This change could be positive, it could be negative. So what EIA does is to first identify those changes that may likely occur as a result of your project and find ways to address them so that, your project can be sustainable. Next slide, please. Do we have laws backing EIA in Nigeria? Yes, we do. Are these people from environment just telling us to do something that is not existing? No. There are institutional framework and there are regulatory framework for EIA in Nigeria. In Nigeria today, at the federal level, the Federal Ministry of Environment that took over the functions of the defunct Federal Environmental Protection Agency, FEPA, is the organ of government at federal level that have the mandate to coordinate and to implement the EIA process in Nigeria. And that is why you see them implementing EIA process across board. And some of our colleagues at the local government level who have participated in the EIA process will agree with me that this is true. Now, at the state level, the Lagos State Ministry of the Environment and Water Resources, because EIA is a policy matter, the Lagos State Ministry of Environment and Water Resources is the organ of the body of government in Lagos State that have the statutory mandate to coordinate and implement the EIA process in Nigeria, in Lagos State. We are aware that some of our other agencies request for EIA as a requirement for some of their processes. Now, we have no issue with that, but when it comes to the EIA process and the grant of approvals for EIA in Lagos State, it is the mandate, statutory mandate of the Lagos State Ministry of Environment and Water Resources. And of course, because the issue of environment is purely on the concurrent list, both state and federal can legislate on it. And as well, the local governments have the right also to be part of the EIA process, because environment, the local government also have laws, bylaws that regulates the environment. And so now let's look at the regulatory framework. The Environmental Impact Assessment Decree number 86 of 1992. It was a decree when we were in the military era, was a law that governs the EIA process in Nigeria. That decree has since become the EIA Act, Cap E12, Law of Federation of Nigeria 2004. That is the law that governs the EIA process in the nation. At the state level, the Lagos State Environmental Management and Protection Law 2017 also have provisions for EIA. And so we have regulatory framework that guides the EIA process in Nigeria. I need to quote a section of the EIA Act, Cap E12 2004 for us. The Act, under its general principle, particularly principle 2, states, and I quote, the public or private sector of the economy shall not undertake or embark on public or authorized projects or activities without prior consideration at an early stage of their environmental effects. That's a typographic error, of their environmental effects. In other words, at the early stage, you are not permitted by this law to embark on a project or an activity that can have impact on the environment without considering at an early stage of that project the environmental effects of the project. But can we now begin to run after sister MDs and say we want to implement the law? Now, Works, tell us why you are doing Lagos Lekki Regional Road without an EIA approval from the environment. Can we actually do that? Who do we arrest? Who do we sanction? So that is why we are at this meeting, to say that, look, we are working for the same government. We are not policemen to police any MDA. We just want us to work together to do the right thing, to achieve the same goal. When you want to do the road, just ask us if it will require an EIA. We will tell you if it will require an EIA, and then we'll advise on how to go about the process. It is not for us to do it for you. It's to guide, to ensure that you do the right thing. And we are not at any point in time thinking of usurping any agencies or MDA's statutory responsibility. Ours is just to provide guidance to ensure that Lagos State that will bequeath for our children are the ones that they can be proud of. Next slide, please. So this is what the EIA process looks like, in case anybody is in doubt. Now, when you have conceived the project, conceived the idea, you register the project with the Ministry of the Environment and Water Resources if it is at the state level. If it's a project that needs to go to the federal level, you register the project with the Federal Ministry of Environment. Upon registration, you are asked to submit a terms of reference. A terms of reference is a document, a small document that tells us how you are about to go, how you intend to go about the conduct of the EIA. Thereafter, officials of the ministry will follow you to the site to verify the site. The purpose of site verification really is to see whether the site is suitable for your proposed project, whether it is adequate for your proposed project, and to see the environmental sensitivity. Is it a wetland? Is it a water body? Is it an environmentally sensitive environment that you are putting the project? And then, based on the outcome of site verification, they can now clear your TOR to say, okay, you can proceed. No, you can't proceed. Add this and add this to your study. That is the purpose of the site verification. At the federal level, scoping is requested for. Now, what is scoping? Scoping is a process of identifying all issues that are of concern to stakeholders that must be taken care of in the EIA study. Just the way it sounds, scoping, it is to determine the scope of the EIA study, the extent of the EIA study. So scoping helps you to identify what are all the issues that must be captured in the EIA study. And then, of course, after the scoping, you go for field study. And then, because EIA is not a desktop study, we have heard about some people making photocopies of past reports just because their MDA says whoever is going to get approval for this must get an EIA approval. We have heard about some people in some practices where they will make photocopy of past reports and ask them to bind it and they will submit. That is, we're just doing ourselves. Now, because EIA is a study, you go through the field, you do field work, you take samples, you do air monitoring sampling, you do groundwater sample, you do soil sample, you do surface water sample, you study vegetation, you study wildlife, and in fact, you do geological studies. So that you can be able to come up with the baseline. What is the current situation of this environment? That's the essence of the study. So that when anything happens in the future, you can compare what you have in the future with what you have as baseline at the beginning. And then the sampling, you take the samples to lab for analysis. And thereafter, you prepare the EIA report. The EIA report is submitted either to the ministry, depending on the size, the kind of project, to either the state or the federal, and then they review the report, and then approval is given. There is a period of public disclosure if it's a project that's going to the federal. The EIA Act, Cap E12, Law of Federation of Nigeria 2004, makes it mandatory that that report must be displayed for 21 working days. And the reason is because they want members of the public to go read the report and raise their concerns and comments. So that when government is taking a decision on the report, those concerns are taken into consideration. Next slide. So basically, this is what the steps in EIA look like. There's a screening stage, there's a scoping stage, there is an impact identification and plan prediction stage, there's an impact mitigation, there's the reporting, and there's the decision making, and then there's a monitoring and evaluation stage, which is the normal IMME. In the screening stage is for us to determine, does this project require an EIA? Because basically, it's not every project that will require an EIA. Does this project require an EIA? Is it qualified for an EIA? Then the scoping stage is to say, how far should the EIA study go? What should it cover? And then, of course, what are the likely impacts? And then what are the measures to address the impacts? These are some of the issues. So these are the steps in the EIA process. Next slide, please. Just to dwell a little on the EIA study itself, because for those who are used to, for those who probably, because we have had people come to us to say, I want to do EIA, can you advise us? And we say to them, get a consultant, get the state government accredited consultant, because they are the one who are supposed to do the EIA. And we use in Lagos State, LASEPA accredited consultants. The ministry does not register consultant. We use consultant registered by our agency. And so when they come, we tell them this is this, and they advise, they ask you, how much does an EIA cost save? We tell them, it depends on your project. It runs into millions. They say, that's too much now. I got somebody last time who told me that he can do it for us for 150. Obviously, when you hear that, you know that it is those who are making photocopies. It doesn't cost much to make photocopies. So it is not a desktop study. So it can be split into, you can split the EIA process study into three. There's a pre-field activity, there's the actual field activity, then there's a post-field activity. Next slide, please. The pre-field activity is where you do all the desktop work. You review all literatures, you review all available documents, and then you pay a reconnaissance visit to the site to see what the site looked like. And then, of course, you can carry out your scoping within that pre-field activity stage. Next slide, please. The field work stage is actually where you mobilize the team of experts to the field, to the site, to do the proper study. And they collect baseline data, like I told you before, air sample, water sample, ground, soil, sediments, and they take all of that into laboratory for analysis. And then part of the field work is actually stakeholders engagement, where they engage the various stakeholders that are supposed to be part of the project. Stakeholders really are two. institutional stakeholders. Institutional stakeholders are MDs of government that are related to the project, and then there are public or communities that are likely to be affected by the project. Those are also community stakeholders. So you are supposed to engage them. That is why when we read EIA reports, we want to see pictures of the consultant meeting with the community. We want to see where they had town hall meetings. We want to see where they meet with the women, where they meet with the youths. We want to see, focus group discussion meetings in such reports. We want to see minutes of meetings they held with signatures and names and addresses of those who they met with, because it is a critical component of the EIA that the people who are likely to be affected by the project must be consulted. And this is why for the Badagry, this Deep Sea Port project, we deliberately took the report to the Badagry local government. Well, maybe some people will say I'm biased about that because I'm from Badagry, but I wouldn't open my eyes and allow Anissa to enter into my eyes. So we took the report to Badagry local government and mobilized the community members to come, because it's a major project. Let me tell you a little about the Badagry Deep Sea Port project. It's a project that is going to be put on a land space of over 1,000 hectares of land. Is going to displace at least 12 communities. 12 communities are going to lose their ancestral land. They're going to be relocated. So, and it's going to have a deep sea port and a free zone. So we are likely going to be replicating what we have in Lekki, in the Bejuleki area, free zone, also in Badagry. In addition, we are going to be taking two problems to Badagry. We're going to be taking the Apapa challenge, congestion of the port, to Badagry. We're going to be taking the Lekki free zone challenge to Badagry. So this is going to be in that axis, and we felt that because this is going to involve resettlement of communities, we must take it to the people. And there is a resettlement action plan for that, and we felt that the people should know. And so in that report, people's homes and houses that were going to be demolished were enumerated. Those who were going to be compensated were enumerated. The number of coconut trees that will be removed were enumerated. All these are details that you will find in an EIA report. You can't do that kind of a report sitting in your room on the system. Are we together? And so that is basically what now let's go to the post-field activity. After you have finished the field work, the post-field activity is the laboratory analysis. You put the data from the analysis together, and then you prepare your report. In fact, as part of preparing the report, you need to identify what are the impacts that may come from this project, predict the measures to address the impacts, develop an environmental and social management plan, and then put together your report. Next slide, please. Just go, next slide. Next slide. Because of time. Go back to stakeholders engagement. I spoke about stakeholders engagement. This is a critical component of every EIA. And if a report comes up about a project in your community and you are not aware of the consultation with stakeholders, you have the right to raise issues. You have the right to raise comments because you must be consulted. The question is, does public sector participators, you and I, do we consult the public? Do we engage the public? Yes, we may say we engage them at the point where we need to tell them your house is going to be demolished. We're going to pay you compensation. Our valuers have valued your house. Your money is 20 million. Just get it and go. Now, we need to improve on our consultation because it is a key component. Now, permit me to say this. International regulations for EIA also makes it clear that even when someone is occupying a land illegally, if he's occupying a land illegally, if he's been there for at least 10 years, you cannot forcefully eject them. The reason is because it is again, except if that project is going to be solely funded by state, but if it's going to be funded by international international finance organizations like IFC, like the World Bank, they will not agree. The reason is because it is against the principles of human rights. And so you must be able to consult them agree with them, and then they must agree to voluntary resettlement. Now, the reason why the Badagry, this deep sea port has not taken place till we speak now is because we have, out of the 12 communities, 9 communities have agreed, but 3 communities says we will never move out. The other time it was just one community, Ivoji community, that held them. The other proponent left, another proponent came back now, started again, and 3 communities have said, we are not going anywhere. And the project cannot start because you cannot do involuntary resettlement. The people must agree. Next slide. Potential impacts. You identify the impacts, you quantify them. Next slide, please, because of time. Now, mitigation measures. This is important in EIA. What are mitigation measures? These are measures you have put in place. They could be engineering solutions. They could be in design to either eliminate the impacts or to reduce the impacts to the barest minimum. And for us, in assessment, we always want our preference to start with you even avoiding the impact. You see the green one down. If it is possible, avoid the impact. In the design of the road, if it's possible, avoid the impact. In the design of the drainage channel, if it is possible, avoid the impact. In the design of the bridge, if it is possible, avoid the impact. For our local governments, in building the stores and the shops, if it's possible, avoid the impacts. So that is for us the first preference. Now, if that is not possible, then minimize the impact. If you cannot avoid, minimize. And if minimizing it is not possible, try to rectify as much as possible. And if you cannot do that, reduce it to the barest minimum. And if that is not possible, then you can mitigate. The red is for you to mitigate when you have tried all the options, and you don't have any other way. Then you can have to find a way to mitigate. Next slide. Of course, as part of the EIA process, you develop an environmental management plan to manage every environmental issue that may come out from that project from the point where the project starts for as long as the project lives, throughout the lifespan of the project. The environmental management plan must exist for as long as the project exists. In other words, if we are doing like regional road and we have an EIA, the EIA will have an EMP that we will use to manage any environmental issue that may come from the Lekki regional road for as long as that road exists. Thank you for your attention.
We'll now be taking questions. But before we do that, I'd like to let us know that we have about 60 participants that are joining us via Zoom. So we'll be taking their questions as well. So right now, if we have any questions, we'll be taking like 5 questions, sir, like 5 questions from the audience.
Dr. Noah,
if we have a question, can we please raise up our hands? When I get to you, please, you mention your name. If you represent an MDA, you let us know, and then your question. Can we raise up our hand? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 6. And that will be all. Your name, sir, if you represent an MDA, and then your question.
The Honorable Commissioner hereby represented, and the Permanent Secretary, Office of Environmental Services, also hereby represented. I want to thank the organizers of this program. I think we are behind, and it's never late than never. We need AIA have been a major tools that we are using to evaluate our projects. But the issue I've seen that we are doing is in a carrot and stick approach. It takes project proponent to come outside to have this category and have this, the category of projects, and they ask them to compulsory get an SIA and AIA documents and prepare. But what we found that Lagos State government does not have such meeting such as part of well, if donor agency will not take any over, I don't think any donor agency will finance any of our projects that we have been doing in the past, and because it's a prerequisite, and they have categories of projects for ESIA classification, and that's why when I want to thank my brother. Like I say, when he was talking about we don't have guidelines. We have guidelines. There are guidelines already existing that we can modify and all that. I want to also say this. I think Lagos Minister of Environment need to take a new approach. This is just like a comment today. We need to take a new approach. We are educating us. Fine. Some of us know about SIA and all that, and it's a World Bank standard for any of the projects to pass through those things before it can be accepted or adopted. But we need to do something. We need to go further from the professionals to the policymakers, to the commissioners and all that, and let them know the importance of this. Then maybe we need to divide our project into two: design and planning, one stage, and implementation, another stage. So you do in 1 year, you can take time to do your ESIA, do all your planning, do everything, get a certification ready. Then the following year, you can now be planning. So that means you have a lot of work to do to see with the MDAs, know their programs and their projects, so that you can maybe to know where to fit them to assist in developing ESIA for those projects. That's the thing, because we lack those it's not everybody that has those capacity to do that. In what we are doing, for example, we're having a project we financed by the World Bank, AFDB. You know, it's a condition, and that is the standard. We are already on the stage of discussing with the consultant, doing everything. We must meet those conditions before you can go ahead. You cannot have funds from vendor partners without meeting those. So we need to also help. And also, in addition to that, help those agencies to build capacity for officers to have desk officers in some of the ministries. Please, I think you are taking notes of please. Help ministry MDAs to have desk officers in each of those project ministries. Train them. Train them. They know what it is. So before you have a contact person in such MDAs, and they can liaise with you and help to assist some of the projects. So, because what we are seeing in Lagos is an aberration. Sincerely, it's an aberration. It's not happen anywhere in the world. It does not happen. It does not happen, and we need to quickly fast track such approach and do that. Thank you very much. Okay, my name is Engineer Odukoya from Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. Thank you.
Can we take the questions together for the response?
Good morning, everyone. Please permit me to stay on the existing established protocol. My name is Gokeku Sheju. I'm from Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. I want to thank Ministry of Environment for this stakeholders engagement. It's very, very good to mainstream environmental impact assessment studies. But I believe we need to do more than we are doing presently. What do I mean by that? To really give us the reason why we need to do more than we are doing presently, I will give us a live scenario. I did a project in my ministry. It was a geochemical mapping, and also while implementing the project, we decided to use the project to get other information that will be useful to us. So it was sampling the soil, and then we decided to sample vegetables, edible and non-edible vegetables, Lagos Central. And we sent the samples to laboratory for analysis. We discover heavy metal contaminations in the soil, in the vegetable, meaning it has got into our food chain, And what does that mean? This heavy metal contamination must have come from industry influence, mechanic villages. I believe some of those industry must have done EIA, whether it was well done or not. They must have submitted something as EIA. So it's not enough to do EIA. It's more important to follow up by implementing the recommendation of the EIA. We have to police them. We have to make sure things are done the proper way. Also, I believe that EIA it's something that we need all professionals, relevant professionals, to be involved in reviewing it. And because as a geologist, if I'm going to be part of the team that will review EIA reports, I will look at the geology of the environment. What is coming from this industry? If it gets into my soil, will the soil, what will it do to the soil? How do I treat that effluent such that even if it gets to my soil, it will have minimal impact? We need to look at it all encompassing. We should do more than talking. Some of these things, very laudable things, that we have a team of all professionals. Let's do it the way we are saying it. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Subair Akintunde from Lagos State Public Procurement Agency. I'm representing the General Manager. I have a comment and a question. First, my comment. While the first speaker was speaking, it talked about EIA being prerequisites to project implementations and procurement approvals. I want to state that that's already we are doing. Okay, thank you. So, because even in about April or thereabout this year, we had a circular from the Office of the Head of Service where we listed prerequisites for appropriate, or what we call proper and standard project management processes in Lagos State, where we also listed requirements and personnel that should be, in the process of approval of all processes. We talked about EIAs, we talked about safety commissions, requirements, and all the necessary plans. So from the side of procurement, I can tell you that we are ready. In fact, we are ahead of you. Even procurement yes, I'm serious, we are ahead of you, yes. Exactly. Even in procurement as, a cadre, what procurement is all about now is sustainable procurement, where we look at the environmental impact of everything everyone is doing. So you can count on procurement in Lagos State to support and assist in ensuring that proper processes are done when it comes to implementation of ESIAs. That's the addition I have. My question is this. We've heard about procurement, EIAs, ESIAs, and all that. I have the pleasure and privilege of having been very close to this process. Some of us were colleagues in this, and I know that we've been doing it for a long while. And we know, like my brother had said earlier, most times, this report you are talking about, we just see it as money for the boys. People just do this thing to collect money. They don't really do it to do the job and, like Mr. Kujeji has said, to implement the plan that we have. So if you want to do it right, one, do we have personnel on ground? These so-called consultants, you say that they are registered with LASEPA already. How good are they? Are they really there to do these things right? Or they just want to be there and collect funds, collect money from developers or proponents of projects? That's a big job for Ministry of Environment to look at. My other question is this. I hope this thing is not only about the big projects. When you talk about the slides you showed, when you are locating, when the local government or even the state government is locating schools, primary schools, hospitals, hotels, and everything around, those ones don't involve multilateral donors. So we do things our own way. You have a big tax in your hand to ensure that when all these ministries and local government and the LCDs, when they're looking for funds and they want to put market here, what do you call it? Parks and all that around, that they do the proper thing. I think you have a big job on your hand.
Yeah, good morning. Our protocols duly observed. I'm Engineer Bakari Lukman from the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure. Yeah, this is not just a lecture. That's the lecture we have received. I've seen it as not just a lecture, but a sensitization, kind of something to call us back to order. And I feel some of us know some of these things before, probably because it's not been put into use. We tend to see it as not important or not relevant to whatever we are doing. Now, having said that, I want to ask this question, and it is to the Ministry of Environment. Impact of environmental degradation and all the rest. ESIA, we are talking about the impact on some of these things we've talked about, like projects, like the environment and all the rest. There's something the first lecturer said that really touched me. Now, people are building up estates around the refinery. I just heard now for the first time in my life that refinery, the people, human beings living around the refinery is cancer. I can imagine. I want Ministry of Environment to do more than what we are doing now, to see how we can help people who are already buying houses around that area. Probably as maybe, I'm not saying we should spoil market for the business people, but there's a way we can sensitize ourselves. Like for me now, if I have the intention of buying anything around that area now, with the little information I just gathered now, I think I have to think twice or thrice. Because I cannot use my money to put myself into, to endanger my life or put myself into risk. So I want the Ministry of Environment to please help us see how they can help us. Okay, there are some temporary impacts. Like, okay, we are building roads, we are putting up smokes and all the rest, we are spoiling the environment. As soon as the project ends, though, probably on the soil or water, or whatever, we still have the permanent. But at least that to the health is temporary. But this one that is going to be permanent, please, the Ministry of Environment, help us do something about it. Thank you.
Number 4. No. 5. I'm coming to you.
I stand on the existing protocol. Please, my question is to the first presenter. Please, I would like to know, I would like an elucidation on the EIA process. How do you go about the EIA? How do you know about a project within Lagos State, a proposed project? Then, that's the first question. The second one is that, how do you enforce the law? How do you make sure that EIA, environmental impact assessment, is being enforced on the building owners of proposed projects?
Good morning. I'm Engineer Bada Bolaji from Transportation. Permit me to stand on the existing protocols. Questions are about threefold. The first one is that is about the policy framework that the second speaker spoke about, which is about there is an enabling law. Yes, I know I have seen the law before, but I have never seen the framework as to how that policy can be implemented. It's like having a Lagos State building law, but there are agencies, there are requirements you need to submit in order to get whatever approvals you need to get. The same thing, Ministry of Environment need to have something like that, that, okay, for you to get this kind of development, there are frameworks from your CIA. These are especially what you should do, the kind of studies. So I think Ministry of Environment needs to help all the other ministries, especially project implementing ministries, to guide them as a framework. You are building roads, these are likely kind of studies you have to do, such that if you even engage a consultant, all these things must be reflected in your whatever analysis of studies you have conducted. Because we do also TIA in transportation and all those things. So I expect to see something like that. And like Engineer Odukoya said, ministries and NDAs, most of them consider some project very light, not heavyweight project. So they don't do it. Even government don't recognize pre-designed stage of an investment of a project. So I think as a kind of advice, there is need for the ministry to help, maybe second some officers to the ministry to do those EIAs, empower them, give them some form of training and essentials, tools to do all these studies, either for government or have a form of policy with government to include it in their B1 preliminaries as pre-assessment stage, studies that you need to do, just like you do soil tests and all those things in their project. They need to help with those things. I think that's all. Thank you.
We have one question from the Zoom participants. And the question is the approval of environmental assessment documents the statutory responsibility of Lagos State Ministry of Environment and Water Resources or LASEPA? Yes, I can go ahead with the response.
Okay, thank you. Let me try to respond to the ones I can. The ones that has to do with Mr. Lassisi's presentation. Maybe if I cannot handle it, he will handle it. You know, he is an expert in historical analysis. Our callings are different. Let me start with the last person who said, is the approval of environmental impact assessment the statutory responsibility of the ministry or LASEPA? I've said this during my presentation. Permit me to say it again. EIA is a policy matter and it's a policy document, and it is statutorily the responsibility of the Lagos State Ministry of the Environment and Water Resources. It is statutorily the responsibility of the Ministry of Environment and Water Resources. At the federal, it is the responsibility of the Federal Ministry of Environment. What NESRIA as an EPA does is that after federal have concluded the EIA process, NESRIA continues with the compliance monitoring of those projects. And so if NESRIA come today to seal up your facility for not having an EIA, they will refer you to the Federal Ministry of Environment for EIA. When you are done with Federal Ministry of Environment, any other issue about environmental audit, compliance monitoring, NESRIA takes over from there. That is how it is, and that is how it's supposed to be. Please let it be recorded that it is the statutory responsibility of the Lagos State Ministry of the Environment and Water Resources. Now, having said that, let me thank our colleagues who have raised very pertinent questions. Engineer Odukoya, thank you so much. Your comments are well noted, and we have a lot of work to do. I agree completely. We have a lot of work to do. This is just a starting point. We feel that we can't start with the principals who are the decision makers yet. Let's sensitize those of us who are the foot soldiers. Once we buy into it, we can now escalate it to our principals, because we are the ones who are going to make them to see the importance of these things. You know, some time ago, I was working with the World Bank on air quality in Lagos State, and we've been having difficulties in getting some approvals, particularly counterpart funding for that project at that time. And I told the guy who was coordinating at the federal level, if we don't translate this into Naira and Kobo, Naira and Kobo, it will make sense to those who are going to give this approval, because if you are talking about somebody having chest pain, somebody is breathing, they will tell you Lagos have been in this dust for so long a time. So let's translate the implication to Naira and Kobo. And that is what we are trying to do now by sensitizing ourselves. When we sell the market, when we sell the message at this level and we are all on the same page, we can escalate it to levels that is beyond us. Good a thing, this stakeholders engagement was approved by Mr. Governor himself, which shows the commitment, his commitment to ensure that this matter is taken seriously. Capacity building, we will move from this level to asking, because we are mainstreaming, and what it means that we are bringing it into your process. So we are going to be requesting hereafter, the MDAs to give us their desk officer, their EIA focal officer, who is going to go through our training process, who will have the capacity to be able to do at least minimal screening, to be say, this project must go for EIA. At least to be able to say this project should be suggested to EIA. So we are going to be able to build their capacity on that. So we are going to request for that, because we can't send all of our officers to every MDAs. We are even looking for staff. So if you send everybody in my department, I will be the only one remaining. If you look at the number of MDAs we have, and I can't carry the load of that department alone. So it is rather we train people who are from the various MDAs to be able to handle that. Well, now, someone talk about engineer, the other engineer from Energy Resources, talking about us review of the report. We've been doing that for some very key projects. We have adopted setting up review panel. I'm sure 1 or 2 engineers from Energy, Minister of Energy, have come from sir, you were at our last review for a post-impact assessment for a power plant. For a power plant in Ilupeju, he was there. We have people from Lagos Electricity Board also there. So we don't do it alone. We bring other expertise to play in a review panel to look at the report, because EIA itself is a multidisciplinary study. You can't do it all alone. So how do you know? Somebody asked, okay, I think it's Titi Abida asks, how do you know where a project is going on in Lagos State, and how do you enforce the law? Well, because you are not an all-knowing individual, you may not know all. That is why we are asking our MDAs to carry us along. However, if it's projects are going on outside of our MDAs, we can know through our monitoring processes. We do surveillance and we do monitoring. And so we discover a lot of projects that are going on without EIA. So through our monitoring and surveillance activities, we do get to know projects that are going on. And then how do you enforce? Well, we have a process. The first thing is to serve them notice. And then if there is no compliance, you serve a stop work order. If you serve a stop work order and there is no compliance, you of course initiate the court processes, and then you can have court order to either seal the facility and in some cases arrest. And so we do enforce. So and then I think that answered that question. Personnel, do we have the personnel for ESIA? Yes, in Lagos, in fact, in Nigeria, the only reason why Federal has not been fighting us is because they know Lagos is the only state in the Federation that has the capacity to handle EIA. Maybe after Lagos is Port Harcourt, River State. We've been with them for a long time and they know us. You can pull a call through to them in Federal and mention 2, 3 names. They say, we know those guys. Are those ones there? Leave them. So that when it comes to that, we have capacity in the state to handle it. And of course, we can build more capacity to handle it. So capacity is not a challenge at all when it comes to handling it. Maybe the capacity will now be fund. Maybe procurement agency should please, when you see our request, just give us approval straight. Don't even ask questions. I think that is the most I can take. I don't know if I miss out any other thing. I don't know if my boss will want to add something. Thank you.
Yeah. So we appreciate each and every one of you for those beautiful questions. The little additions I will be making on this one, taking the issue beyond this place. I must tell you that the issue is being discussed at the state level as well. And I know that immediately the approval of the ESCO was given for the construction of the road from Okwebi to link Odoyala Road. The Honorable Commissioners in his review at the back of that meeting that this has been approved and we have them, they must do EIA for that project, this and this and this and that we have to follow up, which means that making level is being handled as well. But you know that by the time as you're having the approval, the process, I mean, that is the state policy, this road. That policy at that point in time, we expect you to go home and now come up with what you want to do. So it is those of us here that are now going to come up with what to do, the preliminaries, this and that. So if we are on the same page, that is when we can include it appropriately. And as soon as it's getting to the Honorable Commissioner or to the executive tables, they will know that, oh, these are some of those things that we have said. And that's the essence of this type of gathering. Then I know the issue of the consultants was mentioned. The consultants are the one going to handle this job. However, the state do screen them. I know that at the beginning of this year, screen all the consultants that have been accredited before. They were reaccredited, though some of them are dropped, while some other passed the screening. So to tell you that even their own capacity is being tested, and as it has been said, it is a multidisciplinary issue that they want to see. If you are the principal consultant, let us see who is here as your geological specialist. They want to see that person. They want to screen. So, and it's not all of it. It's not just a blanket certification for consultant. Some of them are for study. Some of them are for some other project and other things like that, as far as the environmental issue is concerned. So on the issue of small projects, the EIA law has some specification in the schedule. This and this must do EIA for this. Lagos has moved some categorization. Lagos has moved ahead to say that even where government is saying that if you want to establish a farm or you want to do a housing project of 50 hectares, Lagos is saying if you are doing something that is taking 20 hectares, because there is peculiarity for the state. What is taking place in Kano, the same standard cannot go for Lagos. So based on that, we are allowed to do some things, some decisions, some regulation that as far as peculiar to the state. So, and that is why we have such type of EIA that will be handled by the state. Once it is not up to the threshold that the federal will handle. And just as you have said, this awareness is being taken, as it's been done now, it's been taken down to the level, such that implementation of projects that we consider to be small projects that may have impact, or policies that is going to have impact on the environment are taken care of. And when we are talking of the environment, we all know that you are an environment to me. I am an environment to the next person to me. So what is doing that is affecting me, is impacting me. I'm part of this whole environment. It's also part of my own environment. So we are talking about life. When we talk of ecosystem as environment, we talk of the living and the non-living. We have been talking of the climate change. Everybody wants to say about this. This is the non-living as it impairs, as our activity, anthropogenic activity is affecting the non-living, and which is coming back to the living. So all these things is what we just have to ensure that we all put into So he has answered the statutory aspect. Then on the screening, it is not, as at now, it is not possible to have representative in all ministries. But I think the procedure will be that concept note will be forwarded to the ministry. Ministry will issue a clearance on screening that this we have to go for EIA study before beginning, before you can commence. Then some will give you a clearance that this does not really need a comprehensive EIA study, that you can go ahead or this. So that I think is the level we are now. As we are doing so, you just have to bring your concept note, or if you have a proposal for somebody that you think you have to consider. Do you know what is the screening? So when the screening, now you have the screening result, then you will now use that to know if you are to engage a consultant, if it's government going to, if government that is going to implement that project or not. But the screening will be done by the ministry. And to rate that is what he has said, that there is going to be focal point at each ministry. Such a person will look at the project concept and then be able to write appropriately to the ministry to request for sign off or which other way they want to use in that department. Thank you very much.
Before we round up, I'd like to invite the General Manager Project from Lagos State Property Development Corporation, Architect Remy Adebo, for a brief remark.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm not going to bore us with any other comment on this. We've all spoken very well, and my colleagues had actually made all the remarks that I noted. Well, the advice I have here is that the Ministry of Environment has to step up their game. And what I mean by that is this. Every one of us is aware that the EIA, environmental impact analysis, it's a common balance that everybody knows about. But the fact is that even at some ministries, let me take for instance the Ministry of Physical Planning and Urban Development. When a project is brought to the agency that is responsible for giving approval, I know that they normally request for EIA reports. And just like one of the speakers said, most times you find, people getting documents together, making photocopies of the document, and then print up together as EIA. That does not actually address the project itself. So my advice is this: just like you said in your, when you were facilitating, there is need for the Ministry of Environment to seek executive order to back up the processes. Otherwise, we will talk and then we'll talk, say one thing or the other, and it ends there. There is need for the Ministry of Environment to seek executive order to back that process. And just like you said, it may not be possible for you to have your officers in all the project implementing ministries. However, it is also imperative to know that when you have projects from the project implementing ministries, the documents, the contract documents for those projects has to be brought up to the ministry, to the Ministry of Environment at the conceptual stage of design. Most times you find out that the design had already been prepared, done and submitted to the authorizing agency. And then you now ask for the environmental impact analysis. That is putting the cart before the horse. So I want to advise that at every stage, particularly at the conceptual stage of a design for a project, the Ministry of Environment should be carried along, and their input at that point must, be taken into consideration. Thank you.
To bring this program to a close, I'd like to invite Mr. Olusegun Solomon to move the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Admin need to stand on the existing protocol. I am asked, the assignment I'm giving is to give the vote of thanks, and that is what I'm going to do now. On behalf of the Honorable Commissioner, Ministry of the Environment and Water Resources, ably represented by Dr. Sanut, the Head of Environmental Services Department, the Permanent Secretary, and the Head of Environmental Assessment Department, we want to thank you for not only honoring our invitation, but also contributing constructively to the success of this stakeholder engagement. We believe that the importance of environmental impact assessment cannot be overemphasized in a developing country like ours. And we pray, and our prayer is that lessons learned today will be taken to our various MDAs and organizations, because we believe that we can achieve much when we come together to make Lagos a greater state in the nation. Ìtẹ̀síwájú ìpínlẹ̀ Èkó, àjùmọ̀ṣe gbogbo wa ni. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you.